All right, what is going on, guys? It is Adam aka Marf. Today's video is about a kind of something that's going to hit us in the side of the head if it happens. It is the largest disaster that Earth will ever see. If it happens, how experts think it happens. Again, everybody is focused so much on war and everything that is going on around the world. Not a lot of people have been talking about a disaster that has kind of been in the making for over 100 years, which is a CME or a Carrington level event. We actually were spurred to make this video because of something that we found, and we'll let you go over it and see what you guys think about it. It is a post that was posted on Twitter with a picture of a form that was supposedly put out last year from Department of Homeland Security. So we'll go over that here in just a minute, but that spurred us to look into, well, what are they actually doing? We actually know from some of our affiliates that they are trying to harden the grid. There was an executive order done by Trump that was during his time period that essentially he went into a top secret room, went into a conference, and they came out and he immediately said, we need to harden our grid. So something was said in there. This was around the same time period as all of the crazy stuff was going on. Soleimani was taken out, all of these crazy events. And that was really shadowed by everything else that was going on. But as far as solar events, depending on what you believe, is one of the kind of ultimate disasters, and it is something that is guaranteed, or at least a Carrington level event hitting Earth is a guarantee. But it will be all of the other times it's happened to Earth, because it's happened a ton of times. We didn't have technology, we didn't have electricity. The last time that a Carrington level event happened, again, was when we just first had, telegraphs, and it even lit telegraph wires on fire. It was pretty crazy. Again, it was at the very beginning of civilization having electricity. Now, our stuff is 10 times more sensitive. We are completely dependent on electricity and on the internet and on communications. And again, now, it is now vulnerable once again. We are into the solar maximum. This is a post from the White House that actually says, this was dated December 20th, 2023, around the same time as the DHS post, basically says that it will happen in the next year, 2 years, a solar maximum. Now, we know that, but we'll read this here in a second. But first, let's bring in my co/internet brother, Dex James. What is going on, and how are you doing today?
Well, hello, Adam, and hello, Fugle fam. I'm doing just fine.
So, first of all, we have this document here. This is a news press release. Dex, do you want to go over what it says about extreme weather?
Yeah, so this is coming out from the White House. A lot of people didn't know about this, and it was an update to the extreme space weather. And basically, they're saying the next solar maximum is expected to occur over, not in, but over the next 2 years, meaning at this point on, they're worried about this. They said the upswing in space weather has the potential to pose significant risk on Earth and in space. And to aid our preparations, OSTP, which is the department that's putting this out through the White House, is releasing an implementation plan of the National Space Weather Strategy and Action Plan to build our resilience to space weather storms. Specifically, the plan identifies 3 policy objectives and supporting activities in the space weather observation, research, and forecasting. So 1, to enhance the protection of national security, specifically Homeland Security and commercial assets and operations against the effects. So any of our grid and other things like that, develop and disseminate accurate and timely information. So they want to be able to forecast if it's coming and be able to tell people, at least that's what they say. I don't know if they would tell us if something this bad was going to happen. And then establish plans and procedures for how to recover. So FEMA and everyone else and DHS, how do they respond and how do they deal with what happens after the event?
And as far as the after the event, I believe Black Start also includes if our power grid goes down via a solar event. They've got plans like that. Well, what's kind of crazy is how much we've been covering about our infrastructure and critical infrastructure. Everyone has been talking about and preparing for some sort of EMP event. Again, even if we do not have an EMP, any person that knows about solar weather understands that at some point it's just kind of a matter of time. It's not a matter of if it will happen. It is a matter of when. If we have a big enough solar CME come and hit us, it's going to cause absolute havoc. How much havoc will it cause? Again, It's only happened one other time when we had a modern day electricity, or the beginnings of it, and we had telegraph wires. They exploded. It was pretty crazy. Now, this wouldn't actually hurt people, or some say it would affect us because we are electricity, our hearts, our brains, our electrical signals. But it wouldn't, we wouldn't shut off or anything. But what could happen is our radio communications could black out, our power grid could be fried. It could send surges through essentially the transformers all around our grid here in the US. And again, for all of the places, I'm not an expert on every place it would affect, but I know that the US is one of the places that would be heavily affected. They used to think that certain events wouldn't affect other parts of the world, it would only affect this part. But through huge events and solar flares that have happened over the last 20 years, they actually recorded things that they never thought would happen before. Radio blackouts in areas that they thought were safe. So as far as this goes, now there's been a few executive orders that have talked about this, and I guarantee, and I ask everybody to question everything and question everything that's coming out about all of these things. But this is really back page. Everybody's telling you, look over here. Nobody is really talking about the solar event. This solar cycle has been talked about for now at least a decade hardcore online, because all of the experts that have made their comments about how they've looked back in the past 400 years, there is a cycle. There's cycles of 11 years, and now the new cycle that a lot of scientists are going towards is the 22-year cycle. So basically take two of those 11-year cycles, which can vary from 10 to 13 years, and you have two of those, and they're looking at chunks of the two. Well, they saw events after the termination event, an event at the very end of a cycle, very, very close to what happened right before this solar cycle 25 started. And they say it looks exactly like what happened prior. And prior, after a termination event just like the one we had, it was an explosive, very unpredictable solar cycle. During the solar maximum, there was huge events, or at least that's what they think. Now, if that was true, that means that if we have a huge solar storm that could knock out everything, forget about the war, forget about all of this, it would be pandemonium on its own. And this is something that most people kind of just throw off. It's kind of like worrying, you don't see too many people saying, oh, we're going to have an earthquake next week. Nobody knows when these things will happen. But the crazy part is they can look at these cycles, and they can look at how often they happen. They can look at the activity that's happening right now, and they can see it's going crazy. As far as Wages World, one of our good friends, he spends all of his day looking at all of the data from every source that you could possibly imagine. And all of these different sources have essentially the sun going wild. Now, I know there's certain people here that aren't going to believe this or go the opposite direction. But again, if you believe exactly what they are saying, and if you know normies that are not preparing right now for whatever reason, the one thing that we do all agree on here, or 99% of us, is we're all mostly preppers. We're people that prep. And we see these people around us, these normal people that don't prep, don't have extra water, don't have extra food. They're not slightly responsible for any kind of disaster. As far as this goes, this is a good thing to share with them, because to get the fire under their feet to start prepping, this is a normal event that if they go to their mainstream legacy media, they will see that not only them, but all of the scientists that they were quoting towards the last 5 years, all of those same people are saying that it's an Armageddon coming, right? So whether it is or not, whether we lose power or not, this is something that should be, again, known. It's not something that you should be caught off guard by. Now, Dex, just quickly go over, Obama actually did an executive order as well. We've had several of these over the last few years.
Well, that's true. So what we're seeing is this update that came out of the current White House is mimicking exactly what they did back in 16. Right on his way out, I want to say it was October, there was an executive order 13744, which is the coordinating efforts to prepare for the nation for space weather events. Now, at that time, they weren't ready, or they didn't expect to see that we were on the cusp of this solar cycle, which is going to be the maximum side. So they were talking about getting things prepared. They were talking about establishing alerts for the public, improving predictive in detecting the events. Exactly the same thing they just said coming out of our current White House, reducing the risks to critical infrastructure through mitigation plans and coordinating the response and recovery from the events. So almost exactly a very lengthy executive order. That executive order was again signed back in October 13th, 2016. So that was the precursor, and now we've got this follow up and this new OSTP that's releasing an implementation plan of the National Space Weather Strategy and Action Plan that's coming out from a different administration, but very deep in the website there of the White House from December 20th.
Yeah, and the federal operating concept for impending space weather in events. Now, mind you, in 2016, they talked about how the systems to predict these were not exactly the best. Over the last few years, if you followed this space, no pun intended, they have essentially said that they're actually getting closer to predicting and that they're a lot better than they were even just 5 years ago, even 3 years ago. Now they are starting to nail down things. More scientists are actually going over and switching their lifelong learned kind of thoughts about this, and they're switching over to other thoughts because these other thoughts are starting to prove some of their essays and their papers and their all of these peer-reviewed journals that essentially say, hey, I think you guys are wrong. And for the first time, we're seeing scientists admit that they're wrong and say, hey, this is actually really bad. As far as all of the other stuff that's been going on, of course, people are worried about that. But most people aren't even aware of this. And what's really sad is if something like this happens, people would be caught so off guard, it's insane. And if you actually think about what's going on right now, almost every country in the world is saying, hey, I'm going to take my neighbor. It's like, why is everybody doing land grabs? I just have, it's always an open door in my mind. Are they doing all of this because they know about an event that we don't? There's been several closed door meetings where you have, something come out and all of the governments of the world, like, over in Europe, they do a Cobra meeting. Here we do a secret, situation room meeting. Presidents fly and turn around and go meet. And then all of a sudden they put in executive orders to harden our grid. It's like things like this happen, and you wonder what the heck they know that we don't. Are they going to straight up tell us, hey, by the way, we expect a really horrible disaster to happen in the next 2 years? Well, actually, they kind of have. They've said that all of this stuff is possible in the next 2 years. The W and the E and the F, that form, that actually put out there that in the next 2 years, everything has said the next 2 years that is possible that we will have a catastrophic cyber event. Now, everybody's thoughts on this are going to vary, but it's definitely something that most preppers are looking at. Now, this was put out, and we can't verify this. It looks like a real document. Jack Straw, I don't know who this is. They have quite a following on Twitter. So this we took with a grain of salt, but it did have us actually look at all of the stuff that we could verify. Dex, do you want to go over? So as far as some of the things on here, this looks like an official document preparing them for some sort of huge space event.
Right. So there's a claim, and you can see the Twitter on our website. You can link it. The claim is that this came home to someone from their spouse working in law enforcement and talking about how they were looking at this or having to deal with emergency planning. And this is recent, as posted as of today or yesterday. But never mind the claim. We'll set that aside for a moment because we can't validate any of it. But the documents that are in here do look very official. They are from the New York State. They are from the DHSES, which is the New York's version of their Homeland Security and Emergency Services, and it is the Space Weather Response DHSES Executive Checklist. And the scope of this is to be used by leadership in the potential event that an impact to the state infrastructure or residents. And it talks about the kinetic impacts. It talks about the key considerations and what the needs are, and about communications going down, radio, cellular, satellite, among other channels, would all face disruptions. Emergency call centers would face interruptions, and designated public radio stations they would need to designate specific public radio stations that could actually be potentially reliable and offer connections, and how could they make sure that that information is getting out. Of course, they talk about power outages. This is the big one that they know will happen, and restoring power based on life safety and critical infrastructure as far as the prioritization. But they talk about the fact that they've got their DHSES generators, and they have them in every stockpile, and they have dry ice and water utilities that are required to provide, as well as fuel. So this is basically the checklist of what leadership in the governments and in the different organizations within the state of New York need to follow for this specific space weather event. This is sort of a cascading um, from what we've seen come out of the administration recently, back in December, which is a cascade of that document we showed you earlier from FEMA that came from the Obama administration back in 16 when they put that executive order out. So they have been building up to this point and getting a lot, potentially getting a lot of stuff done. I don't know. We don't know the full details of what they've actually done versus are we just now scrambling to figure out if they're going to do or focus on any of this. Now, again, this document it cannot be found anywhere online. At least I couldn't. Both Adam and I have searched for this, so it does look like a photo, like, as it is a photograph of a document that was not published on the website. It is from April 2023, but that's a form date. That's not necessarily. That doesn't mean that it's not a letter with a date on it. This is a document that was published at a specific time. So this document could have been made in April 2023, and it's been handed out and used throughout the DHSES process for training and working with their leadership. So that's what this is. You guys can go check it out, see all of the different details that are in here, how they're supposed to respond, what they're supposed to respond with, everything from transportation, navigation, healthcare, food, water, cascading impacts, and civil unrest.
And the reason I think that this is a legit pamphlet is that if you look up every single key, ESF4, ESF5, if you look up all of the different acronyms, they all make sense in the context. If somebody were to fake this, which, again, I don't know why they would. It doesn't say there's an impending disaster. This isn't the kind of thing that really goes viral in today's world of war. But when you look at it, they're essentially saying, do you have all of this ready? Wouldn't it make sense? Again, I know that everybody's going to be torn on what is actually going to be the next disaster. But if they did have more information than us, which most of us assume they do, a lot of the things that are happening right now in the world and a lot of the changes and structure changes and future changes, it really seems like they have more info than we do, and they're not telling us everything. As far as this goes, this should motivate people, at least not even this, the entire kind of statement here. Along with this, it points out several times, this is incredibly similar to EMP. So either you have all of our adversaries, which everyone is worried about right now, or if you have a solar event. This is what we've talked about for 5 years. This is what we have chatted with active and retired military members over the last 5 years. It is why we picked up EMP Shield. It's why we talk about stuff like EMP Shield. Again, DHS, all of these agencies, DOD, they're all preparing their own selves as far as they have stuff. They're going to try to have continuity of government, protect their own stuff. Here's the problem. Civilians do not have this coverage. That's why we've recommended going, and if you haven't already, make sure to go check these out. An EMP shield on your car will keep you running to get you out or to get you home. This can be put on a wide range of vehicles, from trucks to motorcycles, RVs, whatever, especially if you live in an RV or if you live in something that's mobile. Definitely a smart thing to be able to get out or to get moved. As far as go to marfooglenews.com/EMP. If you go through this, you'll end up not only supporting our independent media, but you will also get a huge discount of $50 each. These are super easy to put in, and these will not only protect you against an adversarial EMP strike or multiple, it will protect you against a solar event. As far as the different events, if you have not subscribed yet, we follow all of these events. And via friends of ours like Wages World, they are keeping track of this at all times. So if there is anything, the one thing about solar events is we will get some sort of warning, at least for some of the worst part. I believe it can take anywhere from 6 to 12 minutes for the first part, but it takes a couple days for the second, and it varies now. They have different speeds of the storms that have hit. But this is something that, they have been looking at for years. They've prepared. Every country in the world has a plan for this. And it seems like things are picking up in the, rich people going and building themselves bunkers area. So it might be something to at least put in the back of your head and prepare for. You don't have to go crazy. You don't have to sell your house and live in a bunker. But I would suggest having extra food and extra water. Those are really simple things you can do to have yourself, structured better for a disaster. And in the case of another disaster, which we've all gone through, you'll be set as well, whether it be an earthquake, hurricane, or whatever else. So go check it out. And we have a full bibliography of every source here that we just showed you over on our website, marfooglenews.com. That's there for you to use and for you to share. If you share this video with somebody, you can know that the information there is as accurate as you can go check it out. You can go see for yourself what the source is. So then, again, if you share it with somebody, you're confident that you can point out, hey, go, if you don't believe them, go to their sources. So again, hopefully this does, and I can't, usually I say, hopefully this doesn't happen. It will happen, but it's a matter of if we are hardened and if the grid is hardened and up to date by the time it happens. This is a guarantee according to every modern day science. So that modern day science could be lying to us, that's for sure. But again, if you look at anything accepted, it's a big deal. So again, have a basic plan with your friends and family just in case, and take a look at what we've put out here. Again, share it if you would like. We would really appreciate it. Thank your mods and thank everybody else. Thank you, Dex. Appreciate your help on this.
Much love. Great job, brother.
And all of that's available from marfooglenews.com.